Welcome to the first special report on the Truth Commission. The Commission's first hearings were held here in the East London Town Hall, and it's been a week of raw emotion.
We
just heard on the door the police were banging with their guns and they kicking the door, and we all just jumped out. We didn't know what to do because there was no one else there. It was only the three of us.
We heard the anguish of widows, of mothers, and of victims themselves, telling tales of disappearances, of torture, murder, and of suffering. We listened to their pleas for more information on the circumstances of the crimes and the names of the perpetrators. We will tell their stories tonight. We'll also show you some of their testimony. But tonight we will also introduce you to a man who has murdered dozens of anti-apartheid activists.
They were brutalized, they were savagely assaulted, and they were ultimately killed.
What was your role in their assault?
My role was to choke them, to strangle them and choke them.
This policeman will tell in chilling detail how he helped murder the husbands of three of the widows who gave evidence this week. They said they would only be able to make peace with their loss once they knew how their husbands had died and who had killed them. Let's listen to their stories. Monica Godolozi, Elizabeth Hashe, and Nomali Galela are the widows of three leaders of the Port Elizabeth Black Civic Organization, the men known as the Pebco Three. During the early 1980s, Kwakwahuli Godolozi, Siphiwo Hashe, and Champion Galela became targets of the security forces, and their families suffered continuous harassment. They last saw their husbands on the 8th of May 1985, when the Pebco Three mysteriously disappeared. They now accept that their husbands must be dead.
I never buried my husband. My wish is that since they killed him and his friends, I would like the Commission to investigate where they were killed, how they were killed, and why they were killed. We'd like to know the killers. The killers should come forward to confess that yes, we killed them. We killed them. I'm asking for assistance. I've never liked doing that. I'm a proud person. I still don't like it. Now I would even ask for assistance from my enemy. I would like the Truth Commission to assist me. I would even like the Cox evidence to be followed up, because I would like these people to reveal the whole truth.
Tonight we will give the Pebco family some answers. Colleague Jacques Poe takes up the story.
Vlakplaas. Until recently, the base of the police counterinsurgency unit. For 13 years, Vlakplaas killed and assassinated anti-apartheid activists. In May 1985, an askari, a former ANC guerrilla that was turned by the security police, received an instruction from his commander.
Biko gave instructions that we should go and help Port Elizabeth police, because there were some chaps who were making Port Elizabeth ungovernable, and those people had to be eliminated.
The people who had to be killed were three United Democratic Front activists: Nawoli Godolozi, Siphiwo Hashe, and Champion Galela. They led the Port Elizabeth Black Civic Organization, the so-called Pebco Three. In March 1985, they had organized a 3-day stay away in the Eastern Cape. Their campaign played a major role in making the region ungovernable. On the 8th of May 1985, the Pebco Three disappeared. They were never seen again. To this day, their disappearance has remained a mystery. But now, Joe Mamasela has decided to talk. For several years during the 80s, Joe Mamasela was based at Vlakplaas. He says his job was to kill anti-apartheid activists. How many people have you killed as a security policeman?
Well, as an individual, it's hard to say how many, but collectively we killed between 30 and 35.
Why did you kill these people?
It was instructions from the head office, it was instructions from my immediate commanders.
Like people like the cock?
People like the cock, and if you don't do these killings, they kill you.
His commander in 1985 was Colonel Eugene de Kock. He is now on trial in the Transvaal Supreme Court on more than 100 charges, ranging from murder to fraud. The story of the disappearance of the Pebco Three starts on that day in May, when they received a mysterious phone call from a so-called British diplomat who had to be fetched at the H.F. Verwoerd Airport in Port Elizabeth.
In 8 May, my husband came home with Mr. Hash. They were from their offices. He was carrying food so that I can prepare that for him. And he told me that they have to rush for the airport for the British consulate.
A baggage handler at the airport saw the men arrested by the police and taken away.
I was looking through the window. It was a big window. You could see well through it. There were the police. They were in 2 groups. Then I saw the police. They were wearing the camouflage uniform. They put Godolozi in the police van and his friends in another van. They also drove away in Godolozi's van.
Nothing was ever heard of the 3 men again. Police said Norman Fezzi had lied and that the Pebco Three had probably left the country.
What happened there was we went to Port Elizabeth security police. We were briefed by the security police of Port Elizabeth to a certain extent that a certain Tozamile Porter was phoned by this Pebco Three and they wanted some financial help from him. And this Tozamile Porter reassured them that he will contact his British contact, a certain Mr. Charlson, if I recall the name well, who will back them up with finance. And the security forces have packed their telephone and they intercepted that message. And one of the security forces, an English-speaking guy, after some few days, he phoned them back and he phoned the Pebco Three and he pretended to be Mr. Charlson. And he told them that he was at the H.F. Verwoerd Airport and he cannot go to the township. He does not know how to go there. He will get lost. And these people told him, assured him that they will come and pick him up at the airport. But I'm telling you, that was a clear operation. It was a professional operation because from Siphiwo's home, when he left his home, we knew what was going on. And when he picked up Kolela, we knew that they picked up Kolela. And when he went to pick up Godolozi, we knew. He started with Godolozi first, and they went for Champion Kolela. So we knew all that. And as they were driving towards the airport, we had a running commentary about their movement. And as they drove into the entrance of the airport itself, it was as if we were watching television, the way the commentary was so good. And they were well observed. And we saw this yellow Hilux, Toyota Hilux Baki, an old model. And as he stops, 2 chaps climbed off, a hefty guy and a short guy, light in complexion, the short guy. The tall one was dark in complexion, with the long hair. And the old man drove away to look for parking. And we jumped out of our minibus Husky, a blue one, with tinted windows. And we grabbed these 2 quickly. And we pushed them into the Kumbi, and the other security forces, held their guns over them. They couldn't make a move. And by the time the 3rd guy, Siphiwo, did not notice what was happening because the action was so fast. It was lightning fast. It was carried out with a military precision. And then we went to him. By the time he finished parking the car, he tried to climb off. We were already there. And we identified ourselves as policemen and all that. And he was taken to the Kumbi also. And I was given instructions by Colonel Fenter at that stage that I must drive these people's car and follow a certain white Mazda car. And I did as I was told.
According to Mamasela, the Pebco Three were driven to this old police station outside Cradock. It was known as Post Chalmers.
The Pebco Three were driven to a farmhouse that was turned into a police station long time ago, but it was no more used. And they were driven there, they were put into what we call an animal shed. It's like a big, long garage. They were put there for the evening, but they were interrogated first. And the first thing in the morning at about 9 a.m., the joint security forces of Cape Town came in. That was Cape Town, Port Elizabeth, and Cradock. They just came in there and they started interrogating these people. And the first person to be interrogated was Siphiwo.
How were they interrogated?
It was brutal. It was what in Afrikaans people call broekskeer. It was terrible.
Were they tortured?
They were tortured severely, they were savaged, they were brutalized.
And what was your role in the torture?
My role in the torture was to strangle them and stifle them so that they couldn't make enough noise, because there were some neighboring farmhouses nearby. So we carried out our instructions, but
were they eventually killed?
Lieutenant Niewoudt beat them up with an iron pipe into their heads so severely that they were kicked, they were punched, they were stomped, or they were jumped over their heads, and they were killed. Yes, they died. They died one by one. It was terrible. I've never seen anything like that in my life. It was a blazing hell on earth.
The two security policemen implicated by Joe Mamasela in the disappearance of the Pebco Three are Colonel Rolf Venter and this man, Colonel Gideon Niewoudt. He refused to be interviewed this week, but said in a statement from his lawyer that he was in no way involved in their disappearance or death. But, says a senior military officer, I conducted operations with Niewoudt.
I.e. Gideon Niewoudt worked in an operation that I was the coordinator of in 86 onwards in the Eastern Cape. Their total brief was to go out at night to pick up known individuals involved in the United Democratic Front or the alternative leadership structures. They would kidnap or abduct middle of the night, kick down doors, take the individual they want, take him back to the complex, and then interrogate him up to the third degree.
What do you mean by third degree?
Well, we made use of half drownings, electric shocks, tubing, favourite term. That's where you step somebody's face into the inner of a car tyre and basically suffocating.
And what was Gideon Niewoudt's role in this?
Gideon Niewoudt was the senior operator of the police contingent in this combined operation. I was on Bryce where some of the teams were still busy with the subject. We will have a social gathering on this side, and then you can hear somebody moan in another room.
Gideon Niewoudt is now on trial in the Port Elizabeth Supreme Court for murder. The Motherwell bombing case. The state alleges that he was involved in the murder of other policemen. At an inquest in 1993 into the murder of 4 other Eastern Cape activists, Niewoudt once again denied that he was ever involved in torturing detainees.
Major Niewoudt also denied ever assaulting people in police custody during the 70s and 80s, despite the fact that a number of interdicts had been brought against him and his colleagues for alleged brutality.
At the sitting of the Truth Commission in Port Elizabeth next month, Niewoudt may be further implicated in the torture of a young activist who was poisoned and then disappeared. Siphiwo Mtimkulu, who went missing in 1982, kept a diary of his interrogation and torture that will be submitted to the Commission. Niewoudt was one of his interrogators.
Jacques, why should we believe this man, Joe Mamasela?
Mamasela has been cooperating with the Transvaal Attorney General for several months now. He has given them invaluable information. He's made a full confession to them, and as a result of this confession, they have launched a number of murder investigations into Pebco 3 and also into the murder of Fabian and Florence Ribeiro in 1985. And I believe that because of Mamasela's cooperation, they may arrest people involved in the Pebco 3 murders very soon. He has been down to the Eastern Cape. He has been down with a team of policemen. They've restructured the events. He showed them the place where the 3 people were killed. And I believe he's made a very valuable contribution towards solving that murder.
Colonel Niewoudt's lawyer, Francois van der Merwe, faxed us his client's response to the allegation. He says, "My client denies that he had any part in any action which led or could have led to the disappearance of the so-called Pebco 3, or that he has any knowledge in this regard. It is significant that in 3 applications which were brought to the Supreme Court in this regard, my client's name was not mentioned once." The lawyer then quotes from Mr. Justice van Rensburg's judgment in the last of these applications, where the judge said, "If these facts are taken into consideration, it seems to me that the probabilities are in favor of some organization other than the police being responsible for the disappearance of Godolozi and his 2 companions." But in the Truth Commission this week, Colonel Niewoudt's name was also linked to another well-known Eastern Cape murder mystery, the Cradock Four. Matthew Goniwe, Fort Kalata, Siphiwo Mtimkulu and Siphiwo Mtimkulu were the leaders of the Cradock Ratepayers Association, like Pebco, an affiliate of the UDF and therefore targets of the state.
On the 27th of June 1985, he left for Port Elizabeth in the company of his friends, Fort Kalata, Siphiwo Mtimkulu and Siphiwo Mtimkulu, and that was the last time we saw them. They were due back on the same night, and when they did not come back, we knew that something serious had happened. Early in the morning of the next day, I telephoned the UDF offices in Port Elizabeth. I also phoned Derek Swartz and Molly Blackburn to establish their whereabouts. Derek Swartz informed me that Matthew left with his friends for Cradock the previous night of the 27th June 1985 at about 9 p.m. You can imagine the shock, and I shivered to think what might have happened to these comrades. I kept the news secret for a while from the family, all the family, except for one person, my brother-in-law, was planning what to do next. On arrival at home, we were informed that the police had phoned. They left a message with a child, my brother-in-law's son, to inform the family that Matthew's burnt car had been found near the Scribante racing course outside Port Elizabeth. Immediately we knew that something serious had happened. Of course, we had pointers because in May, as you know, the Pebco 3 disappeared without a trace. Relatives and the community were informed, and some members of the family had to go to Port Elizabeth to establish what had happened. It was this group that also assisted the families to identify the bodies later on. On Saturday, the 29th June 1985, the bodies of Siphiwo Mtimkulu and Siphiwo Mtimkulu were found first, and that of Matthew and Fort were found on the 2nd of July 1985. All the bodies had multiple stab wounds and were badly burnt.
On July the 4th, 1985, Mr. Louis Nel, the then Minister of Information, rejected allegations that the authorities were responsible and blamed the murders on an internecine power struggle between opposing radical organizations.
The first inquest came up with nothing. And then the newspaper New Nation published a top-secret message from military intelligence. It called for the permanent removal from society of Matthew Goniwe, Fort Kalata, and others. The signal was sanctioned by the then head of military intelligence, General Joffel van der Westhuizen. Mr. Justice Neville Zietsman found that the Cradock Four had been killed by unidentified members of the security forces. The commission had to adjourn for a while when Mrs. Kalata broke down during her testimony.
It affected me also.
The perpetrators of my husband's killing, they should not only be exposed, but they should appear in court so that everybody can see them.
And this was when Colonel Gideon Niewouts' name came up again.
They chopped off his right hand. We buried him without his right hand. We don't know what they did with it.
Okay.
We want that hand. Yes, we buried him. We heard that it is at the Lekranche police station.
At the Louis-le-Kranzi police station, I was shown a bottle with a watery substance which had a hand. And I remember that Sicelo was buried without a hand. Who showed you the hand? It was hurting. And there was another one who was charged in Port Elizabeth recently in connection with a bomb blast. Niewoudt.
Torture. How many times have you heard stories of South Africans who said they were tortured? And did you believe them? Well, this week, the Truth Commissioners and the public had no doubts as they sat in silent anguish listening to testimonies of horror. Sinkokwana Malgas was sentenced to 14 years imprisonment in the 1960s. After his release, he was detained frequently and tortured on each occasion. His son died in detention after police poured acid over him.
You have told us today that you were tortured many times in many different places. If you are able to, and it's not too painful, could you describe some of that torture? What actually did they do to you?
One is there is what they called the helicopter method of torturing.
Torturing of some kind.
They suffocated me by pulling a mask over my face. With the helicopter method, they put a stick behind your knees and you were hung upside down. Whilst this was happening, you were suffocated.
It's fine. Don't worry about it. That's all.
Joe Jordan, now a member of the Eastern Cape Provincial Legislature, was detained between 1986 and 1989. His back was damaged during torture by East London police.
The chap was there drinking beer. If I can estimate his weight, it was between 90 and 110 kilograms. He stood on my back with his boots and he started jumping. He continued jumping, and that's the person who injured my back. He must have jumped at least 3 times. And although I was tied up, I could feel that something was wrong.
On Tuesday, 4 former commissioners of police, Generals Mike Geldenhuys, Johan Coetzee, Henny de Wit and Johan van der Merwe, issued a statement claiming detainees were always treated according to strict regulations. Not all the stories told in East London were as well known as those of the Pebco Three and the Cradock Four, but their accounts were no less disturbing. Nohle Mohapi was Steve Biko's secretary. Her husband, Mapetla, was killed in police cells.
After the death of Mapetla, I was full of hate. I was full of hatred that can never be accounted. I was hating anybody who was police. I hated them for the oppression. Those were the people who were enforcing apartheid laws on us. They wanted us not to have rights, even the children. When you speak to them, you have to tell them, these are the people who oppressed us.
Tony Lillian Mazwai's son, Siphiwo Mtimkulu, was killed by security forces in 1988. The police put restrictions on his funeral.
Terrorist. I was informed that my son was a well-trained guerrilla. So people who were to be at the funeral had to be limited to only 200. Only the reverend.
No freedom songs.
We don't want any freedom songs.
No speeches.
No speeches. Is it the police? Yes, the police. It was like a war. There was a convoy with police and soldiers.
The name Vlakplaas came up again on Wednesday. Sizwe Kondile was a young ANC activist who was arrested in June 1981. Former Vlakplaas commander Dirk Coetzee said in 1989 that Kondile tried to escape and injured his head when he jumped through a window. General Nick van Rensburg, who obtained a court interdict against another Truth Commission witness this week, ordered that Kondile be killed because the police could not afford another Steve Biko scandal. Kondile was taken to Komatipoort and burnt to death.
Dirk Coetzee testifies that they took him to this doctor who said what I've already said about the Steve Biko case, that they took him to Komatipoort to get this where they gave him poison drops. But he didn't die immediately from these poison drops. So somebody had to shoot him, and then he died. Well, Dirk Coetzee further goes on to say that when he died, they put his body on a pile of wood with a tire and near the Komatipoort River at night, where it took them 9 hours to burn his body. And Dirk Coetzee further says that whilst they were burning his body, the flesh was smelling good, and they were having beers at that time. So it was like a bride to them, according to Dirk Coetzee. And as a mother, I feel that no matter whether it was politics fighting for the land, no matter who, I don't think he deserved all that treatment. I feel it was grossly inhuman. I feel if they could have killed him and gave us the body or left it in the field there, I feel that this was tantamount to cannibalism or even satanism.
For 9 years, the ANC maintained that Sizwe Kondile was a spy. But the Truth Commission is not a one-sided process. Some of the witnesses this week were victims of the actions of liberation movements. Carl Weber had stopped off for a drink at the Highgate Hotel in East London on the 1st of May 1991. A man with a balaclava stormed into the room and opened fire with an AK-47. 5 people were killed and many injured. Weber lost his left arm and most use of his right arm.
My life was changed overnight. Being a disabled person, and it's taken some time. One has to sort of I've accepted it, and have to carry on with the daily routine of my life. It's not something that will be forgotten about, and it's something that I think justice should be done about it.
But Weber still has faith in the Truth Commission.
I think this is a start of something new. And I've got a lot of faith in it, and some other people haven't. And I think it's the start of something new. It's the beginning of something.
On November 8, 1992, the King Williamstown Golf Club was attacked by 4 APLA guerrillas. Beth Savage was seriously injured and psychologically damaged. Yet she believes the Truth Commission can facilitate the healing process in South Africa.
I would like to meet that man that threw the grenade in an attitude of forgiveness, and hope that he could forgive me too, or for whatever reason. But I would very much like to meet them.
In the same incident, Bob Stanford was seriously wounded and had to undergo 8 operations. He was also admitted to a mental institution and later barred from practicing as a lawyer.
I think that any amnesty applications have got to be dealt with on their merits, obviously. I mean, I'm not a person to really voice an opinion in this regard. But I wouldn't object to them seeking amnesty in the same way that I wouldn't object to people like Malone seeking amnesty now. I think they more or less are on both sides of a boiling point, and it boiled over, and now, thank goodness, it's back to normal.
Do you perhaps have any views to express on the issue of reconciliation?
Well, I think reconciliation is taking place right now. It seems to me, in the broader sense, in the narrow sense, there are prosecutions pending and taking place, and I understand, on and for both sides. That is a matter of law, isn't it? It's not for us to interfere with that. But I think that reconciliation is essential if the country is to succeed at all. And I think it's vital that it becomes part and parcel of everyone's life.
And then there were those who became the victims of paranoia and power games inside the liberation movements. Fikile Mtimkulu was shot in the back of his head in Grahamstown in 1986. Former super spy Craig Williamson said that Steve Biko was betrayed by a police informer. The community suspected Mtimkulu.
They arrived again at about 11 in the morning. Among those kids, there was a girl in a mini dress with 3 others. She said, "I can shoot you anytime." She pointed a gun at me, and I raised my arms and pleaded for my life. "You've already killed an innocent person. Now you've come to kill my family." What have we done? She said, "We've been sent to come and kill you and burn down your house."
Reliving the past was traumatic for most witnesses, but throughout the week there was a comforting hand to help them through the pain. Mafu, we've been seeing you all week, sitting in this chair with your hand on somebody's shoulder. What was your role here in East London?
Max, I've been employed by the Commission as a counsellor and a briefer for the victims. So my task here was to make sure that when the victims give their testimony here, the path that they are taking is as simple or as smooth as one can try. We know it is not an easy thing for people to relate what has happened to them. It is very common for people to sort of repress whatever has happened to them in the past. So the Commission now, here it is, saying to the people, relieve what you've been repressed so far. And it is not easy emotionally for people to relieve that. So for me, it was to sort of let them deal with those emotions. If they want to cry, they must cry. But all I was here for is to make sure that if they cry, they know that there is somebody next to them that can make that easier for them. If they feel that they cannot go on, they know that it is not abnormal for them to do that. They can just easily stop and I can take them out. So my brief was to make sure that it is being done as comfortable as possible for them. It is not easy. It is not something that is nice for them to do. but it has to be done. So I was here to smooth that path for them.
Did you feel a lot of pain coming from these chairs this week?
It was painful, it was stressful. And yes, Max, you know, as you know, the second day and the first day was traumatic for us. But the important thing is that, painful as it was, it is important that your emotions must not supersede the emotions of the victim. So what was I doing here was, stressful as I was, sometimes or painful as it is for me, is to make sure that I'm strong for the victim. Because if I break down now, it means I'm saying to the victim, she must break down. So it means, in a way, here am I bottling my emotions so that the person that is giving the testimony is strong. So it meant for me that I had to be strong for the victim. And it also meant that when I get home, you know, it means I have to unwind, you know, because there...
And somebody has to put a hand on your shoulder.
Something like that. But, you know, the usual thing that I'm doing whenever I'm from work home, I take my tracksuit and I jog.
When one talks about torture and murder in the Eastern Cape, how can one not think of Stephen Bantu Biko? No evidence on his death at the hands of police interrogators in 1977 was heard at the Truth Commission this week because his widow, Ntsiki Biko, still prefers a criminal prosecution to the Truth Commission process. In his short lifetime, Steve Biko became known as the father of black consciousness.
Any changes which are to come can only come as a result of a program worked out by black people. And for black people to be able to work out a program, they need to defeat the one main element in politics which was working against them, and this was a psychological feeling of inferiority.
The history of the last decade of the struggle for liberation would probably have been different had he not died in 1977. On the 18th of August, Biko ignored his banning orders and drove to a political meeting. He was arrested at a roadblock and taken to the Sanlam building in Port Elizabeth. He was kept naked and in chains in room 619. Biko sustained serious head injuries during interrogation. In that state, and still naked, probably to humiliate him, he was taken by police van to Pretoria. Steve Biko died naked and on the metal grill on September 14, 1977. The Minister of Police, Jimmy Kruger, immediately told the world Biko had died after a hunger strike. He later changed that and explained that he had banged his head against a wall. He told an amused National Party Congress, "I am not glad and I am not sorry about Mr. Biko. It leaves me cold." The SABC and the Afrikaans press mounted a propaganda campaign to counter the widely held view that Biko was killed by his interrogators. After an inquest that became the laughing stock of the international judicial community, Magistrate Martinus Prins determined that nobody could be held responsible for Biko's death. But the inquest discredited the medical doctors who examined Biko, and it cast a dark shadow over his interrogators, Alfred Oosthuizen, Harold Snyman, Pieter Goosen, Paul Janse van Vuren, Henry Forshee, Ruben Marx, D.P. Siebert, Jacobus Beneke. 19 years later, Steve Biko's wife, sons and friends still demand to know which individuals killed one of South Africa's most talented sons and why they were left unpunished. This week's session of the Truth Commission was actually a sitting of its Human Rights Committee. Let's take a look at how the Commission works. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission has 17 members and is divided into 3 committees: the Committee on Human Rights Violations, the Committee on Amnesty, and the Committee on Rehabilitation and Reparation. The Committee on Human Rights Violations investigates gross human rights violations such as torture, murder, kidnapping, and assault committed between the dates of the 1st of March 1960 to the 5th of December 1993. It may gather information and hear evidence from victims and witnesses in an attempt to find out who committed human rights violations and why. It can subpoena witnesses. Allied to this is an investigative unit. The Committee on Amnesty considers amnesty applications from perpetrators. To qualify for amnesty, they must have committed these acts with a political objective. The applicants may get amnesty if certain criteria are met. They must make a full confession and show that they received orders from a political party or the state. The committee will also take into account the motive, the context, and the gravity of the action. Once the applicants have been granted amnesty, they may not be criminally charged for the same act. Amnesty may also be refused, in which case persons remain liable for prosecution. The Committee on Reparation and Rehabilitation considers the plight of the victims of human rights violations and may consider compensation. At the heart of truth and reconciliation in South Africa is Archbishop Desmond Tutu.
We believe that our country has taken the right course in the process of healing to hear these stories.
Thanks for joining our first special report on the Truth Commission. The Commission moves to Cape Town this week, and we will give you a full picture of events next Sunday, SABC 2 at 6:45. Good night.